Hello and welcome to the B&H Virtual Event Space. On this penultimate day of the year, we are getting back into some Lightroom tips and tricks with part two of the series with Mr. Clifford Pickett. Hi, Cliff. How goes it?
Fred, what's up, man? How are you?
Good. Hanging in there, shaking off some of the Christmas and getting ready for New Year's celebration.
Did you say Christmas
Christmas.
on a B&H podcast?
I mean,
Happy Christmas, Merry Cliffmas, Happy Hanukkah. That's fun.
B&H is all inclusive,
That's
so
so true. In fact, I used to celebrate both until it got too expensive, right? My parents like, no, you gotta choose one.
nine
But yeah,
days. Come on.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. That's so true. You can't argue with multiple nights of gifts.
Yeah. Well, speaking of gifts, we all know there's no shortage of tips and tricks. So before I shuffle off, number one, if you've got any questions for Cliff, please drop them into the YouTube chat. Number two, this is a part two, so a link to the first part will be available in that same chat. And number three, while these shortcuts will help you navigate Lightroom more efficiently, Cliff is going to be joining us for 5 sessions starting January 2nd. Cliff, you'll be going through your whole process for that 5 sessions, right?
Yeah. So while this is more of just the not necessarily groundwork, but just some random tips and tricks, some things that you might not know about that you should that are going to make a big difference. The one next week, right? Starting next week is going to be a little
Thursday.
bit more cohesive. Yep, Thursday. A little bit more cohesive, a little bit from start to finish, and give you more of a framework that's comprehensive about how to get started, the best practices, and how to get the most out of this program. This is like the icing on the cake. This is the fun stuff before we get into the more comprehensive, the meat and potatoes of this all. This is the dessert.
Yeah. Yeah, and even the side dish, you could once you dive into that entree of Lightroom week, if there's anything that you need a refresher on, you'll have these two videos to jump back to if you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And who doesn't like dessert first, right? It's a perfect analogy. So this is the dessert first. The real meal is coming next week.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm going to excuse myself. I'll see you at the end. If there's any questions in the middle that fall into place, I'll interrupt. All right.
Thanks,
Take it
man. I
away.
appreciate it. All right. Welcome back, everybody. My screen here. Hopefully you guys can see that. So this is part two, like Fred mentioned. The first session we did previously, there'll be a link in the show notes and all that. That was a little bit foundational, right? That was a little bit, I took my time. You'll probably notice I was a little bit slower than I typically am. I'm actually back in New York now, so I'm gonna be talking a little bit faster, right? That's what we do here. But now the training wheels are off a little bit, right? I want to go a little bit faster. There's a lot of ground to cover, and I want to get through as much stuff as possible. Um, just like the last session, you can go to lightroomtipsandtricks.com. There's a QR code for you there. That's always helpful. And this will give you access to all of these slides, right? And it's also going to get you access to this that I just built out. Spent a lot of time doing this because I wanted to create a resource that gives you so much value. That's what this is all about. It's giving you as much value as possible. If you're going to spend your time with me, I can promise you I'm going to deliver as much value as possible. So what this is an online interactive directory of all these slides, of all these tips, and you can search for something. So if you want to know about denoise, here you go. It goes right into that tip. And here you have the slide with some tips and tricks right here. So all this is going to be interactive. And it just, I think I've never seen anything like this before. I'm kind of excited to share it with everybody. And I think it's going to be very helpful. I hope it's going to be very helpful for a lot of you. So I don't want you doing screen grabs, taking notes, just focus. This is mostly about, like, this is a dessert, right? The more comprehensive stuff is coming next week. And then beyond that, we're going to do a full session, right? When I do my boot camps and do my online training, those are multiple days. So I really walk you through step by step and we do this together. But this is about removing those blind spots, of getting you to understand and get you to know the things that you might not know. And those little tips, those little like nuggets of information go a long way when you're doing this over and over and over again, right? So any one of these tips and tricks, all of them actually, and more that I'm going to be able to share today, they're all listed here. They're all on the site. And you can just click on any one of them, and it's going to take you right to those slides that you need. And this includes all the slides from the previous one as well. So that's what you'll get when you come over here. You'll just sign in, put your info in, and you're going to access to both. You're going to get the slides. You're also going to get this interactive Cliff's Notes, right? The cheat sheet to Lightroom. And it's engaging, it's interactive, it's something I've never seen before. So I hope you enjoy it. Now, I'm going to close out of this for a second because we've covered some of these slides. And if I remember correctly, I think we were somewhere around here. I just wanted to continue where we left off. It was somewhere around syncing. I think it was this, somewhere around here, right? So I'm going to pick up where we left off and we'll get started here. So everything, just like I mentioned last time, everything I'm going to show you is for the singular purpose of saving you time. That is the most important thing that we all have. It's a truly limited resource and the most important thing. So if I can give you time back, that's the most important thing I can give to you. So that's the purpose of this. So everything we do in Lightroom, the reason why we're using it is because it's a catalog-based system and it allows us to speed everything up, allows us to scale things tremendously. And syncing is a beautiful example of this, right? When we bring it into other programs, even Photoshop, we're working on one image at a time. If we can batch, if we can scale, think about how much more that we can get done in as little time as possible. That's my idea of workflow, right? The least amount of work, the most amount of flow, the least amount of time, the most amount of creativity. And so we have all this at our fingertips. We have the proper way of doing it. And there is a proper way of doing it. And I'll get into a lot more of that next week. It makes a difference, right? So let's just dive in. We'll pick up where we left off, sync, Shift Command S. That's the shortcut here. So if I go back to Lightroom, I'm going to grab a few of these files. And by the way, I'm using a Mac, right? So I'm going to say Shift Command. You can think Shift Control if you're on a Windows or a PC. And this allows us to synchronize our settings, right? It's going to bring up this dialog box. And then I can choose everything. I can say check all, or I can say check none, and just sync the certain effects that I want. There's the exposure, it's the white balance, it's this or that, right? Or I can sync everything. So Shift Command S, I didn't start using that for years down the road because I used to use this, copy and paste. And this works, I still use this all the time. Shift Command C, Shift Command V, right? And it's the very same thing. I can go into an image here and I can copy that, it's the same dialogue, and I can go to the other images and I can select even incongruent images and I can paste those settings, right? So Shift Command C, Shift Command V, those two come in handy, but this just saves you an extra step, Shift Command S to sync. Okay, I added this slide because someone else asked me at the end of the last presentation, right? How do we switch between our crop mode, right? So if we want to go into here, for instance, now the shortcut for crop is R. And if I hit X, I can switch between horizontal and portrait, right? So that's how you do that. Okay, I did that for the person that asked last session. Okay, keywords. This is another one. Now, I'm going to get into this more next week again, and a lot more when I do my boot camps and everything else. But keywords are how we find our images. What's the point of taking the pictures, the photos, if we can't find them? It makes it so that we can find our images. I'm going to show you a lot of different ways that we can use keywords to help find them and ways we can automate it. But the great shortcut to this is Command K for keyword, right? And this will save you so much time. So if I want to go into, let's just choose a different day. Here we go. Let's say I want to keyword these Dolomites. I can hit Command K and just type in Dolomites. That's it. Then I can go on and I can keyword it mountains. I can keyword it sunset. I can keyword it anything else, right? And if I can revise it just by double clicking, that's another good shortcut to know. And then let's say I misspelled it, which I totally misspelled it. There we go. Right, now we have that keyword. Now, if I want to put this keyword somewhere else, this is kind of like a bonus tip. This is such a time saver. Let's say I want to put this keyword inside of Dolomites. I'm going to have to find that keyword. I'm going to have to go to Italy. I'm going to have to go to the location. That's going to be a nightmare. And I see people like wanting to rip their hair out, and I totally get it. So all you have to do is type in Dolomites. And then I also type in the keyword I just created, right? Mountains. And then I can just roll this up, right? So if it's not North America, I have the Dolomites there. And I can just drag one into the other. It's that simple. So I use the filter for both keywords. So one's the parent one I want to go into, the child one I want to go into, and then I just get all of them. I get just those next to each other. There might be a few more if you have, some overlap with the spelling, and you drag one into the other. Very simple. So Command K, great shortcut to know. And as you start typing it in, it's going to remember the keywords that you already have, right? So if I come down here a little bit more and I start typing in, I don't know, Italy, you see how it automatically picks that up, right? And we create a hierarchy. So I just have to do the lowest level and it automatically keywords all the way up the list. So it takes literally less than a second. Command K, type in the first few letters, and it's going to keyword that. Just like that. You hit enter twice. One to confirm that that's the word you want to use, another one to commit that. So Command K, great keyword. Target collection. So we have our folders. That's where we have to store our images. We have our keywords. That's where we're going to find our images. We're going to get into that a lot more when I talk about the workflow and organization. And then we have collections. So what the heck are collections for? They're there when we have a purpose. So they're when we have a reason to put something together. We want to make a slideshow. We want to make a book. We want to make a website or portfolio, right? But the problem is we're going to have a lot of these collections. So if we use B to bring your image into a target collection, let me show you what that would look like. So let's just grab these since we're on this page, I guess. And I'll say, I want to use this one and this one and this one. I want to go to a collection and I'm going to say, let's just say mountains of Italy, something like that, right? And I'll include these photos. Now, this is another tip too. If I hit OK, it's going to jump me out of where I am right now. It's going to move me into this collection. So instead, what I want to do is hit set as target collection and uncheck this box. And then I'm going to hit create. So I'm left where I am. So I can continue working. I can stay in that folder. I can go to a different folder, whatever. But if I made it a target collection, all I have to do is that keyboard shortcut B, and it's going to bring that image into the collection. Right? That's all you have to do. And if you hit Command B, it will bring you into that collection. The images aren't there. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. I have a larger catalog, so it takes a second or two. It takes a little bit of time to get in there. So that's all you're going to do. B to bring you into collection. Command B to bring your image in the collection. Command B to bring you to that collection. Really, really nice shortcut. So I wrote that down for you there as well. All right, grouping and stacking. Now, technically it's called stacking. So if I took these images, for instance, and I wanted to stack them so that I only see those images, like just one of each sequence, of each scene, it's really handy to be able to do that. I call it grouping because it'll help you remember that shortcut, Command G. So I can hit Command G and I can group them. I could say, all right, now we have this scene, Command G. Then we have this scene where she's walking. This is in Burano, one of our workshops in Venice. I'll take all of these and I can group these, right? And I'll just hit the minus key to make these a little bit smaller. I could say, all right, so we're going to take all of these and let's group in this location, Command G, just group them, right? Now they're all up here, 46 pictures. And I can click on that little link. It's going to expand it, click on it, and it's going to collapse it again, right? Really helpful. So I can go to each location, Command G, each location, Command G to group. Now, if I want to ungroup, Shift Command G, ungroups them. I can also right click. They still call it stacking. That's why I use both words. But I can collapse all the stacks or I can expand all the stacks at once. Right. So just something to keep in mind too. It's really handy because this way you don't get overwhelmed with your images. Right. I could just go there, Command G, come to the next scene, Command G, and keep on going down. And when I do that, it's almost like it's cathartic, right? It's kind of fun to be able to do this. But now I'm left with all of these sets of images that are all unique, all different, and I can go into each one of them and choose my favorite. Now, along those lines, let's say, let's go down a little bit more. All right, let's go to a different day here. Okay, so I have a scene like this, right? And I have a few different versions of this image, let's say. I don't need to see all three of these, right? I only need to see one, but let's say this is the one I want to see. Now, one, I would star this. But if I want to group these, I'm going to click on, you see how the middle one here, what I'm clicking on is more selected than those, it's more highlighted than the others. When I Command G for group those, that's the one that stays on top. So if this one, I'm just going to make this black and white so you can see the difference with this photo here. And I'm going to select all of these. When I hit Command G, that stays on top. right? And let's say this was the one I wanted to stay on top. Now that stays on top, right? So whichever one you most select, this is great when you have, I don't know if I have any bracketed ones here. I typically don't bracket as much anymore. But let's say, let's just make it up. So I'm going to have this darker one. Oh, I remember the scene. This is so cool. And I have this brighter one. I'm going to make a virtual copy, command apostrophe, and I have an even brighter one. So let's say I'm bracketing these, for instance. Typically, you want the middle one. And I do recommend, so I'd set this up for all my students that customize their cameras. And I have it go from dark to bright so you can see those bracketed sequence. But if this is the one, the problem is if I just go to group these, traditionally, Command G, it's going to put that darker picture at the bottom. That's not what I want. So if I click on that one in the middle, whichever one is the best exposed image, Command G, now it's going to group them with that photo on top. Right? So that's really handy to know. Grouping. Shift Command G will ungroup. Okay. Batch merge. So in terms of grouping here, right? Let's say we did have this HDR, right? And I want to group this. So Command G. And I want to group maybe one of these. If I built like, let's say a pano, maybe it'll make sense if I go to here, right? So I have a pano here. I can group all these. And now I just have this one set of images. And I could do this for multiple groups, right? So if I go into, I probably have a few more panos here. Here we go. So I can go into this pano, group that. I can go into this pano. I can group that, right? So I can group multiple panos together. And then when I do, this is such a nice shortcut to know about. This will save you so much time. Knowing the shortcut, now you don't have to know the shortcut. You can right click and you have photo merge and it can merge to pano. But if you take a look at the shortcuts here, right? Control M, and it's going to merge these. I have some virtual copies here. It will merge those all at once. So I can batch these, group that, right? And then I can just batch these all at once. So it's really nice to be able to, just something to keep in mind. Okay, so that's batch merge. You can do that for panos. You can do it for HDR. You can also do that for an HDR pano as well. So I group all of them together first, and then I run all those panos. Really, really helpful to have. All right, auto stacking, right? So that's basically, it's similar. I still like to do a little bit more manually because I can kind of see the images that I want. So let's just select all these. I'm going to go to stacking. Where do we have that here? I can just hit Shift Command G as well. But I don't want to merge these yet, right? I'm going to go to stacking and I'm going to unstack these. Okay, there we go. All right. Now, if I want to auto stack these, I can right click and go back in that stacking, and we have the option to auto stack by capture time. Right. And what that will do is you're going to find the amount of time that's in between each set of images. So let's say you shot something in the morning, you shot something in the afternoon, shot something in the evening. That's very obvious. There's hours in between. So you can say the time between stacks is quite large. Right. And if you're doing brackets, a lot of brackets, if you just wait a minute, you can say, all right, just a minute, just 10 seconds, just 5 seconds, something like that. And it'll tell you how many stacks it's going to create, and it's going to build those stacks. Right. And I can just group that into a stack as well. And again, it's just there to save you time. You can always go back into stacking and you can unstack all of them. It's all virtual, it's all non-destructive, but this will save you time, right? And it in certain scenarios, it really does save you a lot of time, I will admit. But for me, I still like to just go through here, Shift, Command G, here, Command G. And you can do that for your HDRs as well. Okay. All right, rename and catalog. Now, this is a new one. This just launched, really. So I used to, you know how we update our catalogs and it says -3, -4, -V11, 5. You're like, oh my God. It's so important just to have one catalog. Just one catalog. I can't stress that enough. It just simplifies everything. And I have a whole nother slide that's going to talk about that. But one of the ways we can do it, and we can simplify it, is just to rename our catalog. So typically you'd have to go into your catalog settings, right? And that could be tricky, right? Because sometimes if you don't even know where it is, if you go to catalog settings, you can go to general and you can say show, it's going to show you where your catalog is, right? So this is where my catalog is. And then I have to go here. You can see how large my previews are because I'm building smart previews and previews. So I'm on the road pretty much full time. So I have these smart previews for all of my files. I have over 1.2 million files. But I have my master catalog here, .lrcat. That's the file you're looking for. In fact, for my students, I usually put like a green dot on there so we know which one. Typically, this would say -3, V11, V12, blah, blah, blah. It's so much nicer just to see the proper name, right? So that's why I created that slide. You can go to File, and you can just rename the catalog. It's very simple to do. So, and also you could just go to Help, right? And if you're not sure where that is, just rename catalog, file, rename catalog. There you go. Okay. All right, change your default catalog. So this is actually really important. And this is something I'll be walking you through next week as well as we set things up together. But you really do want to change your default catalog because otherwise it's gonna open up to whatever you had open last. And imagine how, believe me, I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. I've seen so many ways to do this wrong and so many ways for this to get messed up. If we go into preferences here and we go into general, typically this will say something like load most recent catalog, right? You want to be careful of that because what happens if you have your catalog on an external drive, for instance, and then all of a sudden you don't have that plugged in and you know, like we all do, it's going to warn you and you're like, click, 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 whatever, just create a new catalog. Now you're working in a new catalog. Or what if you couldn't find your catalog? Now you're working on a backup catalog. You never know which catalog you're working on. So the first thing I do is have my students click on this, go to preferences, go to general, click on default catalog, and change it to that one catalog that you just renamed. I'll be walking you through that a little bit more. But it's really important and just know how easy it is to do it. Now it will only and always open up that one catalog. Really, really helpful, really, really important to be able to do. So I set this up for myself too. And if you're using multiple computers on each computer, set up default catalog. It can open up to that same SSD that you can plug in. So you can work off multiple computers if you really want to. All right, your default camera profile. This is interesting because if you shoot, let's say you shoot black and white, it's pretty cool to have, you know, a digital camera now. We have these mirrorless cameras that we can see black and white preview. It helps us see a little bit differently. Or let's say we put it on landscape. I'll put mine on Vivid on a Sony quite often. Or we use portrait mode. We have these different profiles. When bringing it into Lightroom by default, it's not going to show you that. It's going to convert it. And if you're ever curious about like why, Adobe has to choose something, right? It's just numbers. It's just data. It's just zeros and ones. If you're working with a raw file, we're talking about raw files here. But if you go into presets here, right, you can choose camera settings. Now, Adobe is recommended, I'd recommend this too, Adobe default. They really have spent a lot of time creating a color profile that's fairly neutral and a great launching point for most people. And I recommend people just do Adobe default. But you can, if you really want to, and you're like, I see that image, and then all of a sudden the color shifts and I don't like it as much, right? Or I have a very specific looking camera that I want to preserve. This is where you go and change it. So camera settings here, right? And you can even have it create a preset for you and import, and you can do it camera specific as well. So you can customize and fine tune that a little bit, but just know that that's possible to preserve the black and white, to preserve that color profile when you bring it into Lightroom. All right, solo mode. This falls into the category of focus, right? When we want to sit down, we want to edit. The problem is if I'm going to work on, let's choose, I don't know, let's just choose another photo here. This looks cool. Okay. Yeah, this is going to be cool. So I want to work on this image, right? I want to recover the highlights a little bit, and I want to maybe warm the photo up a little bit. And then maybe I want to just bring a little more attention to this part of the image. So I'm going to bring that down and maybe warm that up a little bit. Okay, this is starting to get interesting, right? I'm going to go into my effects and everything else. But you'll notice as I start going through these, I'm going to get into my color grading maybe, go to my highlights. I'm moving fast because this isn't about the specific edits I'm going to do. But now we're starting to get a little bit more interesting of a photo now, right? So there's our before, there's our after. Okay, so that's starting to get interesting. Now, why am I talking about solo mode? Is because when I click on one to the other, what you may have noticed is it closes down the other tabs. That's really cool. If I didn't do that, right? If I right click and I can uncheck this, this is where you would turn this on. You right click on any one of those tabs and you can uncheck this, right? It'll be unchecked by default. As I start working my way through, you're gonna notice I'm gonna start scrolling more and then I get distracted and then it starts to look like a science experiment. And this is too overwhelming, right? And the whole point of this, so much of what I do is to eliminate that overwhelm, to simplify things. And once I found out about the solo mode years ago, the second I turned it on, it was like a breath of fresh air, right? So you just focus on that one thing that you want to work on, and it will help you focus more. So solo mode, right click, choose solo mode. If there is something that you'd never use this tab, I don't recommend it, but that's what this customize develop panel is there for. So every now and again, I'll come across a student that they're like, where's the calibration tool? How come I see it on your screen and not mine? This is just sort of like a bonus tip for you guys. There might be a few out there. You probably turned it off here, right? I recommend keeping everything on. I pretty much use all of it. But if there's something that you forgot that you turned it off, this is a good place to turn it back on. And I'd recommend leaving it on. Okay, that's a little bonus tip for you. All right, tabs. So I believe I covered this last time. I'll just go through this quickly. I'm going to minimize this video of me. Okay, good. So tab key, if there's a keyboard on your shortcut that's going to get rid of these tabs, what do you think it is? It's a tab key, right? So it's going to just get rid of these tabs on left and right. Shift tab is going to bring all these tabs back, right? And this will be different, by the way. So if I hit tabs in my library, I can see more of like this thumbnail grid, and I can hit this plus or minus to make it larger or smaller. But if I go to my develop, I don't typically use this left side. I want to see more of the image. When we go back to my library, if you remember from last week, it's grid, G for grid or library. You see how the tabs are specific to the module. So when I go back to develop, and D for develop, the right tab is open. Now all these tabs are closed. Shift tab is going to get rid of all of them. Shift tab is going to bring all of them back. And you can right click on any one of these triangles here. And you can choose whether or not you want to auto hide or show, or just keep it manual, right? Some people love the auto hide. Some people drives them crazy because if you hover over it and you're trying to do something, it's going to pop up. It's going to drive you bonkers, right? So I like to keep it manual and I just use the shortcuts tab. Okay. And again, guys, all of these are listed here, right? You can just type in tabs and you're going to find this specific slide with all of this, right? This couldn't be like more appropriate Cliff's notes for this. All right, collapse open all subfolders. So we hold the option key while clicking on a parent folder, right? So if we have, and this is really important. So the workflow that I set up is very specific. I insist that we organize things by date. That literally is the only way we can do this properly. There's a whole lot of reasons for it. Trust me, I work with people from every background, from every genre, from every experience level. I've taught this at university level. I've worked with professional students. I work with grandmas just organizing their family photos, all of it. A photo represents a point in time. So we organize things by date because it's the one way we can allow to automatically organize our photos. But how we do it by date is actually really important too. I've seen people create a folder 2024-12-14. Why? Right? We just need one folder, right? So you'll see all these blues, for instance, this little precursor here, just it's showing my travel photos. If I click on this little magnifying glass, this is a nice little tip too. I go to color labels, I can turn that off. So I can just look at my personal work, my client work, and my travel work. So if I turn this off, I'll see more of my folders, for instance, right? So it just helps me kind of narrow down the chips of the travel from everything else. I believe I talked about in the previous session. I'll talk a little bit more about that here as well. But you're still going to have a lot of folders, right? So if I go to 2024 here, you'll see all these folders, and you'll probably find yourself doing this too, right? Where you're just kind of rolling this up and rolling this up. I prefer to do a year, month, day, so I can roll up the months. This way I don't have to click the year and have 350 folders I have to scroll through. times 10 or 20 years, right? That's a lot of scrolling. So I do it by month, but the problem is it's annoying to have to just scroll all these up. So that's where the shortcut comes. If I hold the Option key while clicking on that parent folder, it'll close it up and then automatically close that up, right? And if I do the same thing again, right, I can automatically open these. It's not as good of a use case to automatically open these, but if I hold the Option key and I click, it just opened all these too. So that's a really nice one to know about if you have a lot of folders and you're breaking it down by day specifically. Okay, change background color. So this is appropriate. Let's find a picture in Norway, right? Because I need a picture with snow. Let's do something like this. This has got a lot of snow. There we go. If I reset this, oh, this is actually fairly well exposed already. I'm going to darken this out. And typically the images come out looking like this out of camera for most people's photos. Okay. Now you also have a black background because your eye gets drawn to the light. And so I prefer to have that dark neutral background. But if you right click on this, you can change this, right? So for your, by default, you're going to have something that's like a grayish color, which is fine too. But I like having that black point. But more importantly, when you're working with snow or anything that's white, especially if like a wedding dress or something like that, right? If you click on white, all of a sudden you start to realize, whoa, that's not white. What I thought was white a second ago wasn't, because our eyes trick us. White is relative. If you've ever skied and put those goggles on and you're like, everything's warm, and all of a sudden, like after a few minutes, everything just looks normal until you take it off and everything looks blue, your eyes adjust, right? Your brain's interpreting what you see. But when you have a white point, now I can bring this up. And so it starts to match a little bit better. And white is not just about brightness versus darkness. It's not just about luminance. It's also about having a white balance point, right? So I can use that white, that background white, as a true neutral, true brightness factor, because it might look good when you have a dark screen, you have it on a black screen or a dark gray, but if you post it somewhere, it goes to a website or it goes somewhere else, and they're showing it on a white background, that's a big difference, right? So get in the habit of knowing that you can change that, and this is what I typically edit on when I am shooting or editing photos of snow, specifically of snow. All right, fill your toolbar. So what the heck does that mean? Your toolbar is this thing on the bottom here. Let's go to another photo. Here. Okay, good. Something else to look at. In fact, let's go to a crop. And I'm just going to crop this a little bit because I think this will look cooler. Good. Okay. Toolbar. T for toolbar. That's your shortcut. That's your shortcut there. T for toolbar. That's going to hide and disappear. But you might notice that my toolbar is going to look a little different than yours. So here's a little trick. You hit this little icon on the bottom right here, and that's going to bring up all these options you can put on there. Now, by default, you're not going to have all these options. You're just going to have a blank toolbar. But I want you to click on that bottom right triangle and put everything on there, because why not? Right? We have this toolbar, we have all this empty space, and it's not like that space just collapses or goes away. It's just literally useless negative space. So T for toolbar, T to hide it, T to bring it back, click on that icon and check all those boxes. So you have all these other things that you might not know that you can do right at your fingertips. Now, here's a pro tip. Colors are the extension of your number. So you might know that if we click on an image and we hit on the keyboard 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. I have my filter on, so I'll turn that off. Let's turn that off for a second. Okay. Now let's say I hit 3 or 4, right? I can choose any number I want to for these. But if you continue these stars, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and there's no shortcut for 10, right? So we have to right click on the color and make it purple. But if I just hit 6, this will make it red. 7 will make it yellow. 8 will make it green. So having those colors on your toolbar makes it a little bit more simple and intuitive to work with your images, right? So fill your toolbar, and T is a shortcut for toolbar. Okay, HSL. Does anyone know what that stands for? Hopefully, I literally wrote it down. Hue, saturation, luminance. right? Now, if we remember that hue, saturation, luminance, we could probably use this photo right here, right? Now, you can go into a couple of different panels here, but if I go to my color mixer, this used to be called HSL. So if you don't know older model, you'll see HSL. Now they call it mixer, which throws us off because it doesn't correlate as well, right? But it's still there. You have your hue, you have your saturation, and you have your luminance. But you have to open up that tab, you have to click on the hue, and then you have to adjust it, right? And we don't necessarily want to do that as much. So Shift Option Command H. Shift Option Command H, and I can just adjust the hue just like that, or just the hue just like that of the water. I'll brighten this up so you can see what I'm doing. Shift Option Command H and adjust the hue. There we go. That's a little bit better. If I want to adjust the luminance, Shift Option Command L for luminance, and that will make it brighter or darker. And of course, saturation, Shift Option Command H, or Shift Option Command S, sorry, for saturation. And it just puts the saturation at your fingertips, right? And again, Shift Command R will reset everything. Command U will auto adjust it. So just remember that. Saturation using calibration, right? So let's choose another image here. I like kind of bouncing around. Let's find another image that would be fun to talk about. Let's do this one. Okay. This is one of my favorite spots in Lofoten. So cool. Okay. So I'll reset this image, and that's the edit. That's maybe a precursor for what you'll see now. This is an HDR, so I'll take the HDR off because you can't see that through Zoom right now. So that might look a little bit better on your end. Okay, so if we're going to use saturation using calibration, I'll create another virtual copy here. And I'm going to hit Shift Command R to reset this. Now I can do my vibrance and add a little bit more punch. And I can do my saturation and it offers a little bit more punch. But what I typically do is go to my calibration and add to that blue channel. And you'll see what that does there. If I go back to this photo, you'll notice I already did that. So you'll see how it just adds this punch and this saturation, but in a unique way, right? It's because every photo, every pixel, if you look over here in the top right and I hover over my image, every single pixel has a red, green, and blue, RGB. Our screens are RGB. And you'll see that on the top right of my screen, right? It's giving the percentage. And if you want something neutral, you look for a roughly even percentage of red, green, and blue. But every pixel has some percentage, or most pixels have some percentage of all three colors. So this is working on those foundational underlying colors. And that's what we're adjusting. So it's not just doing the blues. The reds have blues, the yellows have a little bit of blue. So it's adjusting that foundational blue, and it gives you just a little bit different way of adding saturation to your photos. And it tends to just look really, really cool. Right now, if you have a lot of blue like this, you got to be careful because it would be too far, right? But it adds a little bit of punch. That's just something to keep in mind, right? I use this actually more than I use the vibrance tool. Let's see if I can find another photo where it makes sense to do it. Let's do maybe this one. And you'll see the punch that adds. It's not just the blue. So sometimes I'll go a little too far, and I like what that did. And then go to my color mixer and go to saturation of just the blues and back the blues off a little bit. Right? And it gives you this a little bit more punch to your photos. So consider saturating your photos using this calibration, specifically that blue channel. All right, the golden 39. This is something I came up with years ago, and I use it for just about all of my golden hour shots. Let's see if we have any in here. If not, I kind of put some together. Yeah, I'll just do golden hour. I chose this one, for instance. Okay. Now, I just remove these people quickly. I guess I can do that. Just queue for quick removal. And that will do actually a pretty good job. Just so you know where we started from. And it's so easy to do this inside of Lightroom now. That does a really good job. Almost most of the time. If it doesn't, you just try it again. If it looks weird, that's because I have the opacity, right? So all I would do is adjust the opacity for this, and it will just totally remove these people, right? And we have our size there. But I don't want to focus on that actually, because I can remove them obviously, and we removed them before, so just to save some time. But really, what this is about is color grading. So you'll see I have this 39 here. If I go to my color grading and I put 39, I have this warmth. And this just adds this like little bit of sunrise or sunset or golden hour to all the photos. Right. And I'm sure I can find more to show you what that looks like, but it's just so nice to have these sunrises and sunsets bring out this like warmth to the photos. It really does make a big difference. So anywhere we have this golden hour light, it's just going to look absolutely stunning. Okay, let's move on. I'll be going into this in a lot more detail when I go over the editing. Finding loose images. Okay, so everything's organized inside of year, month, day, right? So let's go to this folder, for instance. Right now, you'll see that there is 10,000 photos in here. Right, you might not be seeing 10,000 because I have this filter right now. If I turn that filter off, you'll see that there's 10,000 photos in here. Now, if I go to library and I turn this specific feature off, show photos and subfolders, that should read 0, which freaks people out, right? But if I collapse all these now, these should all read 0, right? And I can keep on going, but you'll see what I mean. You'll see the days have numbers, but the parent folders have 0. What that means is if I show in Finder, right? If I want to show you where this folder is, there's actually no images in this folder. There's images in the subfolders. So that's what Lightroom is counting when you have this turned on. But what if you do have loose images in these folders? You never want to have images in folders and also in subfolders, one or the other. Either folder has other folders, so it's a parent folder that has child folders, or a folder has images. You never want it to have both, because if you do, if you have loose images in here, you'll never know about it, right? Because if I click on this month and I turn this back on, it gets lost in the sea of 10,000 photos, right? So what you do is you go to library, you turn this off, and if this number reads anything but 0, those are your loose images that you're never going to find because you're going day by day looking for your photos, but it's not in any specific day, right? And what I'll do is I'll select those images, create a collection inside of that parent folder, and then just call it loose images, and then put them where they belong, right? And when I'm done, library, show folders and subfolders, and that comes right back. So that's a really, really important shortcut. You wouldn't believe the number of photos that I found on my students' catalogs because they just have loose images everywhere. And if that rings true to you, this is a shortcut that's going to help you. All right. Name your color labels. So this is what I was alluding to before. You'll see these blues here, right? And typically when I work with my students, I have them organize things by year, month, day. And then we go day by day and we keyword and we call, and then we mark it complete. And this way you can keep track, right? But you can right click and you can add the color and I can mark it as complete. And what I do is I usually will do the month that way now. So sort of evolve this because the month will show me whether or not, if I see this as complete, I know that all the days inside this month is complete, right? What you can do and how do you want to organize this is you go day by day and you can say, once you're done keyword and calling those images, is this client, is it personal, or is it travel? You can choose your own kind of categories. If it's a problem folder, you can mark it red. And then I'll just, when I work with you, if I work with you, I just look for those red folders, right? It's that simple. And you can come up to the top here, and this is usually where I start when I'm with my students. And I'll say, show me, filter by just the problem folders. Let's tackle those first, right? So if I turn off blue travel, right, you'll see, a bunch of other folders will show up here, but most of my work is travel, especially for this last year, which is why you're seeing so many travel right now. So what you do is you go to metadata and you go to color label set and you go to edit. And yes, you can do this for your photos too. Everyone's gonna have a slightly different workflow. To me, I'm not concerned about how we color label our pictures. It's just helpful to stand out. If you're an event photographer, maybe do like bride and groom, something like that. But the folders, this is actually really helpful, right? So you mark as a red and move on, and I'll just tackle that with you and I'll solve it. Right? You can mark as a yellow if it's personal. I like red, yellow, green. I like green to just mark it as complete. And I do that on the month level and on the year level. So when I work with my students, I can look at year after year after year and just see that we've went through all the days and months in that year. I know we're complete. The individual folders, I can have that be personal, I can be travel, I can be client, that kind of thing. Right. And you can save this as your own default. So you'll see Lightroom's default here. That will be a little bit different. And then if you like this setup, you can just type in the same thing I do. I just kept the word, like the actual word of the colors. So that when I right click on a folder, it shows me that red means problem, yellow means personal, that kind of thing. But you can add your own colors as well. This is just what I personally recommend. And it helps us keep track, right? So if I have a folder that has any color at all, I know we've looked at it already. And it gives you this little like check of like, all right, next folder, next folder, next folder. And we can keep track of it that way. It's really, really important. So name your color labels.
Hey, Cliff, since we're in deep on the organization parts
Mm,
of Lightroom, we've got a question from Tim.
yeah.
What do you do if it was a scan of an old photo without a specific date? Like, I'm guessing, how would you handle like organizing that into your catalog?
Yeah, yeah. Um, I believe I do have a slide. In fact, let's just see. Change metadata, date and time. Here we go. Right? Look at that. That's so cool. What I'd recommend to Tim is go to this document first. But here's what you do. You want to change the metadata and time because in Lightroom, everything is organized by date and time. It doesn't mean, and I see people get this wrong all the time. I'm gonna spend a lot more detail on this. When I do my boot camps and anything else, we spend like a good hour just understanding, like on a foundational level, what this really means. Um, Everything's organized by date because that's literally what a photo is. It's a moment of time that you capture. And it cannot be anything other than that, right? When you take a picture, it can't be of last year if you took it right now, and it can't be of tomorrow if you took it right now. You're stuck in time. But a digital picture has that timestamp embedded into it, right? If you have scans, that's going to be different. So what I recommend is having a folder for scans and dump all of your scans in there. Now, if you're going to work on this project, if you're about to like go down this path, right? Go down this journey. One, have a nice glass of wine with you, right? Two, and enjoy it. I mean that sarcastically, but I also mean like enjoy it, right? You're going down, memory lane, so to speak. But do yourself a favor and organize your scans in chronological order to the best of your ability before you start scanning. Whether you send it out or you do it yourself, whatever, try and get them roughly in order. So when you look at them and you scan them in order, people get older, not younger, right? They're not jumping around. Then when you bring it in, you can put it in a folder called scans. And then slowly you can start chipping away. And this is something that you can put in a collection and share with friends and family. You can make a fun family project out of this. And you can have people chime in. When was this? How old was little Johnny here? Whose birthday? Whose wedding? Right? And you can start to slowly put them in order. It doesn't mean that's how you're going to find them. It means that's how you're going to organize them. How you organize things are your folders. How you find them are your keywords. Because I have like one student that does this, unless you're savant, you're not going to remember Uncle Johnny's birthday party or Aunt Sally's wedding was July 16th, 1997, right? You're going to go to a keyword for that, or you're going to name the folder that because we function on names, who we were with, what we we're doing, and where we were, right? And I go into that in detail on how to organize. The reason why this is a long way to answer because you need to understand the foundational level. We need a system that works all of the time. Not some of the times, not just when we have our iPhone pictures that have GPS, not just when we have digital cameras that have timestamp embedded. It needs to work all the time. And we need a place to put our images in our folder. So I'd recommend putting it in scans. So I have a folder, let's say this is the scans folder, for instance. Right now, if you have a digital camera under metadata, you're going to have date. In fact, I have all these filters that I set up for people that will break things down. And I could say, find anything by camera info or camera location. But that depends on if you have a digital camera. So it's going to organize by date regardless. And then you're going to name the folders for the event. And you're going to keyword it for the who, the what, and the where. That's the system. And it works every single time. But again, what the heck do we do with our scan photos that don't have that date? You need to go into those, again, roughly put them in order before you scan them. If not, you can put them in order afterwards, right? You can just kind of drag them into place. And this is another tip that we're going to cover in later. I might as well just show you this now. You can, let's say like this is little Johnny's 5th birthday, and then it's really all the way up here. You can take this picture. I'm holding the command key to click on that and then just drag. All right. And it's going to move these other pictures next to it, right? So I can move all these pictures just around by doing that, just like that. So you can move them in order. Once you get them in order, people get older over time, because if you look at this sort order in my toolbar, again, T for toolbar, if you don't see this, it's going to sort chronologically by default. And you can change that, but I'd recommend keeping it for most scenarios. So you get them in order, and then you can go to metadata, and you can go to edit capture time. And then you embed roughly, right? We don't need an exact day, but if they're wearing shorts, it's probably summer, right? If they're wearing pants, it's probably winter. Just choose like a rough month and a rough year. And it doesn't matter if you're accurate, it only matters that you're consistent. What I mean by that is people get older over time. So pick a month, pick a year, which is why I want you to organize this first, chronologically. Then you can actually embed a specific day right here. Change a specific file. Now, if your camera's off, you know, sometimes we forget to do time. It doesn't really matter, but if you're traveling a lot like I do, and sometimes it's shifted way off, like 6 or 12 hours, you could shift it back. You can shift it back by however many hours you want. This gets embedded in the photo. So what you're doing with your scans is embedding that location, that date into the scans itself. And when you do that, then you create a folder. Like you'll see I have a folder for the year and the month and the day. If I go down to 2024, you'll see this, right? Then you create a folder for the year, month, and day once you've embedded that metadata into it. But you're going to do yourself a huge favor by organizing that before you start scanning them. So it's not as hard to kind of move things around. But that little trick of like grabbing these and then just moving them like that, helpful so that you don't have to like scroll up and then try and drag it and do all those other things. Right. So hopefully that answers that question. All right, moving on. Batch delete rejected photos. So this is a good example. This was, remember we had that Aurora? I was out in Vegas. That was pretty wild. So let's say I don't need, these photos are too dark. I'm going to hit X to reject, and maybe X to reject. Okay. If I hit Command Delete, I can remove just my rejected photos. Now, I have a whole reason and a whole thing that I don't want to get into right now. We'll get into this a little bit more about why I don't delete images. And it's not that I'm telling you not to delete them, but if we have limited time, and we all have limited time, our time is way more precious and better spent looking for the photos that we want to work on rather than looking for the ones we don't. And I'll be getting into this a lot more, but think about that. This, you guys are familiar with Pareto's principle, right? 80-20. It's actually closer to like 90-10. And when I work with my students, I realize, honestly, 80% or 90% of their photos are ones we don't want to see again. It doesn't mean we need to delete them, because guess what? This technology changes so fast. We can bring things back into focus. We can recover skies. We can bring out detail. We can crop out of photos. All these things I'm going to get into when we get into the develop. There's so many things that you don't even realize yet we can do. And think about what it's going to be like in a few years, right? So that's why I recommend not deleting it. You can reject it. But if it's like critical to you, foundation to you, if you went through all of your photos and you found them and organized them, keyword, called them, put them in collections and shared them, and you still have extra time, go back and delete them and clean it up rather than spend another $100 on a hard drive at B&H. That's where you can reject them and batch delete them. Command delete is how you do that, right? Don't sit there and delete one by one. Hell no. And if you delete them from disk. Don't remove them from Lightroom. Because the workflow I set up is I put one giant memory card in, or two, in my camera, and they just overflow. I put that memory card in and just imports in new photos. If I delete my pictures, guess what happens when I put that memory card back in? It's going to keep on re-importing those photos. I'm keeping them on memory card because that's my instant backup without me doing anything. There's this whole workflow I'm going to show you guys. But trust me, it's not in your best interest to delete photos. It's in your best interest to find the ones you want to see, not look for the ones that you don't and delete those. It's not the best use of your time, but that's how you're going to batch delete photos. All right, default filters. I covered this in the previous, I believe I covered this in the previous session. I'm not going to get into that too much. Just know that for each day, you can click on these custom filters that I built, and I can say just daily defaults or day defaults, sorry. And what that will do is just hide your videos because you can't do much with your videos anyway. And it's just going to show you, it's going to hide the rejects. So if I mark this as a reject, it'll just disappear. For those of you that you do like rejecting your photos, it just disappears from your view without permanently deleting it. It's a non-destructive way to do it. And when you're done and you go through your folders, you go through your files and you found the ones that you like, you just mark it as a 3, and the system that I'm going to show you to set up will remember that. So when you go back, you're not seeing 149 pictures, you're seeing 5 or 6. And if there's 2 that are too similar, you just downgrade one of them until you have a good representative sample of all the pictures that you shot that day. All right, so that's a really quick, and I'll just bring that up for a second. So I have this by the day, I have this by the month, I have this by the year. I do this for all photographs as well. It's really handy to be able to do that because it puts all the filters at your fingertips, and I have it defaulted to only show you the ones that you want to see again using that very specific star method. Okay, shift, and again, you can look at the previous video and I'll be covering this a lot more. And you can always reach out to me if you have questions too about that, because I've never seen anyone do that before, and it's really, really handy to be able to do that. All right, shift rating. So what the heck does that mean? Let's say I looked at all these and you're like, wait, Cliff, I've been doing the rating all wrong. I've been making these 5s, all of these. And then I realized, wait, I haven't even edited these yet. Like, what about the ones I want to put in my portfolio? Now I'm recognizing when I watched how your course and everything else, I need to make these 5s, but how do I do that? Right? What I can do is, let's say we have, this is a 5 and this is a 4. And I'll do this actually myself sometimes. And this is some 3s and we have 4s and everything else. And they're sort of all over the place, but you realize I sort of jumped the gun. I really meant to do 2 3s and 4s instead of 3s, 4s, and 5s, right? You can select all of these. You can select the whole folder, for instance. And this is a shortcut. You just hit the bracket key, and that will shift all of your stars back or forward and in relationship to each other, if that makes sense. If you understand what I just showed you, that is huge if you didn't know about that before. If you start all of your images in a certain way, you're like 2s and 3s and 4s, my 4s are my favorite. So you realize, wait, that's not right. There's literally no other way to do it, right? You select all of your pictures and hit that bracket key. It's the one right next to the letter P on your keyboard, and that will shift them in relationship to each other one way or the other. And I'll do this if I have clients. I'll do 3, 4s, and 5s, and I realize, wait, I'm seeing all like my clients' work in regards to my own. That's not helping me as much. So I'll take that whole folder and I'll just shift it back like 2, just like this. And now I have 1s, 2s, and 3s instead of 3s, 4s, and 5s. It keeps everything in relationship to each other, but it doesn't show up when I look at my 4 and 5-star images on my personal one. So there's some real value to that if you understand what I said. And again, guys, once you have this access to this, just you can type in rating and you're going to find exactly what this is. And I'm working on creating a specific video for each one of these tips that will explain it more. So I got you covered. Don't worry about that. All right, folder history. This is a new one, right? So let's say I like this image, and let's filter this. And let's say I like this image, and I like this image, I like this image. And I go into my collection here, and I'm going to say demo trip favorites or something like that. All right, or let's say Italy trip. Right? Let's make this realistic. Italy trip favorites. And I include these folders. Remember I said before, I don't include them. I usually make an entire collection and hit the letter B, but I'm going to include them, right? It's going to take me out of that folder where I was, and now I'm in this collection. What if I want to get back to that folder? Option Command left arrow. Option Command right arrow. Option Command left arrow. That will, Option Command left or right arrow, will bring you back in time. So I can jump from one folder to the next to the next. Right? It's not immediately obvious how to do that. That's a really nice shortcut. If you just want to get back to that last place where you were, Option Command left arrow will take you there. There's a built-in history. I don't know why it's like a little obtuse on how to find it, but it is what it is. Okay, this is really cool. Sorry if you can hear the sirens. I'll talk a little bit louder. Now there's no question about where I am. I'm in New York. Okay. I've been looking for a way to correlate my favorite images. I'm going to hold on. Hopefully that helped a little bit. All right. I've been looking for a way to correlate my images, my favorites on my phone to Lightroom. And there really isn't. And I understand why, because they're two different companies, two different softwares, right? But what if there was? So there's a new update in Lightroom that allows you to default Lightroom on your phone, Lightroom Mobile on your phone, when you open it up, to just look at your favorites folder. So anything you heart on your phone is a favorite. And when you open up Lightroom Mobile, it's going to default. And this is the step-by-step process to do that. You open up Lightroom Mobile, you click on the little icon on the left that says device, and then it'll say something like recents, probably for most of you by default. Click on that on the top left where I have that arrow, change that to favorites. And now when you open up Lightroom from here on in, it's just going to see your favorites. So if you want to edit something in Lightroom quickly or bring it into Lightroom, mark as a favorite first. It's faster and easier to do on your phone. Open up Lightroom, you're going to be looking at just your favorite photos. It's really, really cool. Then you can hit that select button there. You can select all of them if you want to, and then you can import all of your favorites. By default, it's just going to look at them. It's not until you go to edit them, it's going to bring it in. But you can bring in just your favorites. And then you go to Lightroom and say, all right, here, take all the pictures I just imported, take all the pictures of my iPhone that are in my catalog, mark them as a 4-star. 4-star in my system means something you want to share, right? 3-star is something you want to see again. 4-star is something you want to share and edit, because you're not going to edit anything you're not going to share. You're not going to share anything you're going to edit. Something that others are going to see. And then 5-star means portfolio, right? So if we've edited it or we want to edit it, it goes in as 4 stars. This is where to correlate your favorites on your phone to Lightroom, because there's no direct one-to-one transfer. Believe me, I work with Apple directly, and I also work with Adobe directly. There's not a better way to do this at the moment, and I'm working on some ways that might be helpful. But I understand why. This is a great workaround to have.
Since you
Okay.
brought up mobile, we have a question from Paige. Is this similar to Lightroom Mobile? She asked it earlier, so I'm guessing since the Cliff Notes is the roadmap for what you've been showing us, will some of the Cliff's Notes carry over to working on the mobile version of Lightroom?
For the most part, yes. Yeah, for the most part, it's a very, very similar system, and they're designed to work together, right? So I need to know specifically what they have in mind, but the workflow that I've developed, there really is like there's nothing else out there. It's not about me bragging. It's just I've developed something over decades working with students from every background and need and workflow and genre and experience to find something that actually works. And we have. And I know it because it's not just something that works for me. Most people you're going to see on this platform and others are showing what works for them, and that's great. But what works for them isn't what's going to work for you. What I've developed, what makes this a little bit unique and different, is it's something that works for everyone, because that's what I do. I spend more time working with other students than my own work. Right. So I know what works for everyone. And this is something that works for everyone. The reason why I'm mentioning that is if it works part of the time, if it only works for Lightroom Classic, then it doesn't work. Because what happens when we take phones, mobile photos? What happens when we shoot with a drone? What happens when other people take photos and send it to us? What happens when we scan photos, right? It all needs to work, because if it doesn't, it's going to break. And if it doesn't work all the time, it doesn't work at all. And then it needs to be future proof. There's never not going to be an exact place to put a photo if you follow this workflow, because we're organizing by time. We're using keywords that are going to get automated, and we're using ways to share images that are non-destructive. It's leveraging all the new technology, and it's future-proof in a way that you're never going to have to redo anything you do, right? That was a promise I made last week, and I'm going to do it again next week. Anything you do, you only need to do once, and you never need to do it again, right? And so when it comes to Lightroom Mobile and Lightroom Classic and Lightroom Desktop and Lightroom on the web, and if we have time, maybe I'll get to that a little bit. If not, we'll dive into that next week. It's designed to work together, including Photoshop, right? They're designed to work together. Sometimes it doesn't seem that way. There's like different words and stuff like that, but they all truly do work together. So yes, everything I'm showing you will work with Lightroom Mobile. And for those of you that don't know my background, I am mobile first. I've basically devolved into iPhone photography. You know, they kind of brand me as like an expert in iPhone photography. I work with iPhone photography school. We had courses and training all over the world. I make a living as a professional photographer and educator on my iPhone. And I work directly with Apple, so I understand the need to have the most popular camera in the world built into our workflow because it's only going to get more and more popular. So yes, all of this works with your camera. This is a perfect segue. So whoever asked your question, thank you. The power of one, right? This is all about simplicity. This is all about making your life easier. And I truly believe that perfection is achieved not when there's nothing left to add, when there's nothing left to take away, when we can remove something, it gets better. That's the mark of good design. When you can remove something, it gets better. The best engineers in the world will understand that. What can we remove to improve? Ooh, I like the sound of that. I never thought about that before. Remove to improve. So the power of one, we want to simplify as much as possible. We want to have one catalog. Trust me on this. You don't want to have multiple catalogs. I've fixed every which way to do this wrong. One catalog. Now, the reason why this is so specific to that question before is that if you have more than one catalog, Lightroom can only sync one catalog to the cloud. So think about the issues you're going to have if you have catalog for this client and then that client. I've seen people have catalogs for all their different clients. What if you want to share photos in a catalog through Adobe so they can edit, so not edit, but they can comment on them and they can heart them. You can come back and you can work on them. There's a whole workflow. I'll show you guys on how to do that. That only works if you have one catalog, because if it works without one client, it won't work for another if you have a client, if you have a catalog for each client. So you want to have one catalog. That's what syncs to the cloud. And your phone, however many devices you have, will sync up to the cloud to that one catalog. You also have one computer. You don't have to, but it's nice to have. And the reason why I mention that is because I'm working, again, full-time traveling professional photographer. I do a lot of corporate commercial work and everything else. I've never encountered a scenario where I didn't have enough power on my laptop to do the job, ever. And I just got the newer M4, but the last 3 years, 4 years, 3.5 years, I've worked on the M1. I haven't used a desktop in years. And I recommend to most of my students because if you just have a laptop, you can get an external monitor, right? B&H is a great place to buy them. The monitor technology, go watch the Future Photography. Just type in Clifford Pickett Future Photography HDR, the new HDR. I did a session, I think it was like a week ago or a week and a half ago with Greg Benz. The monitors that are going to come out soon, they're already built into the MacBook Pros, by the way, are insane. So much better. The HDR capability and everything else. By detethering the computer from the monitor, you can take advantage of whichever technology comes out first. And by having one computer, you can just take that to the couch, take it to the library, if you have those, take it to the coffee shop, take it on the road, take it wherever, take it to the beach, and you have everything you need on that one computer. If you have multiple homes, great, just bring your laptop with you. If you insist on using multiple computers, then you're going to have one SSD, you can get an 8 TB drive. I have links on my website. And just plug that into each computer you want to use. But ideally, honestly, the best scenario is have a laptop with an external monitor, and you will thank me later for that. It's going to make a huge difference. Simplify. You just take it with you. There's no travel catalog. I see people do that and travel backups. I don't carry a travel catalog. I've never, that's ridiculous. I've seen so many, it's good for business for me because I've had to fix it so many times. There's so many people. You just have your actual catalog with you. It doesn't put you any more jeopardy because you have a backup that stays at home. I automate the whole thing for you. So you don't have to think about it, right? Simplicity. We're going to make it more simple. One parent folder for all of your pictures. If you're at home most of the time, you're not traveling the way I do. I have it a little bit different because I'm traveling. So I spread it out. I spread all my photos out across multiple drives. And I'm working on a NAS system and everything else. But I find right now, in most countries I'm in, the internet's not fast enough. So for most people, have one catalog. If you're traveling, you can have one folder and you can split that across multiple. The 8 TB SSDs now make this a lot easier. And there's a little hub you can buy that connect multiple 8 TB SSDs into a single port, right? So it's gotten greatly simple, but one parent folder, all photographs, all your pictures are in one place. And once that's backed up, you know you're safe. Your Lightroom imports directly in that one folder every time. The cloud from your phone downloads to that one folder every time. Everything has one simple place to be. I'll get to this more next week. One SD card. Why do you have multiple small cards? What's the point? Get one large card. You can get a 1 TB card now for like $150. It's totally worth it. And if you have a second card slot, put a second one in there. Now you have 2 TB. Why? Because I don't remove anything. I don't format my cards until the end of the year, until I know it's backed up, until I need to. I have an instant backup. If everything went wrong, I had all my stuff. You guys weren't tracking the Future Photography and some of the other stuff in the B&H. I had all my stuff stolen in Rome earlier this year. Imagine devastation that would have caused, right? And it still sucked with me. But having all the stuff on my memory card, and I keep my camera separate from my luggage and I have it on me, it made so even if they stole my drives, my backup drives, I had everything I needed in the camera as an instant backup. Right. And then I'm backing up to the cloud as well. So I'll show you guys how to do the automated workflow. One hard drive, ideally, if you can, get a large drive. And what I mean by that is one hard drive array, right? So if for those of you who have specific questions, just reach out to me. I need to understand how many photos you're working with and think about how many photos you may be shooting over the next 3 to 5 years. That's something to really consider. Because if you buy a hard drive now, I can tell you from experience, it'll fill up in 2 or 3 years. The resolution is getting higher. Our phones are shooting 50 megapixel 4K HDR images now. It's crazy. We're shooting 8K videos. It's going to get filled quickly. And then you have a lot of multiple drives lying around, right? It probably resonates with most photographers. You get a large bay, an array, that's what they call it. And you could just add. If you need another 24 terabytes, each drive, 24, just plug it in. You get another few years out of that, or 10 years, depending on how you shoot. For me, that's like 3 years, 3 to 5 years, right? Single drive, plug it in, expandability, but you have one drive. And then one backup. That's the failure of this. No, you need more than one backup. You're going to have your images saved on site through your large memory card to your primary drive, whether that's a drive at home, you have a little SSD you can plug in. I just mount mine right to the back of my laptop. And then an off-site online backup. I use Backblaze, but I can set up through CrashPlan or others as well. You can use a NAS for that. You can use Myo, something I've been working with them over there. They're a great team, and that's backing up in real time. But you want something off-site. So you want more than one back. Everything else, you just want one. I'll get into it more detail, but trust me on that. You're going to simplify greatly. It's going to make a huge difference. Okay. View on web to download offline. What the heck does that mean? So if we want to share our images, let's go back to here. I just have a few images here. I've been syncing to the cloud. Right now, I can right click and I can go to Lightroom links and I can view on web. But if I choose this option down here, view on web, not the one at the top, that's a public link. That's what everyone else is going to see. The private link is going to take me, hopefully you guys can see this, to these images. These are from the last session. I just kind of put a few images together randomly and synced it with the cloud. This is how you can share photos. This is the better way. This is the best way, really, to share. Second best way, most intuitive and easy way and free way, let's say, without third-party plugin, to share your images with others, because it's non-destructive. You can add, you can delete, you can edit, and they just have to remember that link, right? If you send them an email, it's garbage. It's not. They're never going to find it again. They don't know where to put it anyway, right? We barely know where to put it. Think about someone else, right? So you share a link this way, but the problem is, what about downloading the files? You can't, there's no option inside of Lightroom to enable downloadable pictures. I wish there was. But if we click on this little icon here on the top, we can go to settings, right? And we can enable downloads, allow downloads here. This is off by default. You can turn that on, and now you can enable downloads. And the reason why, where do I put that? Here we go. All right, I'll just leave this as a slideshow so I can switch back and forth. Max resolution is 2560. These are not full resolution downloads. If you're working with Lightroom Classic, everything I'm showing you, is Lightroom Classic. We can't upload full resolution pictures, which is benefit and a curse, right? It's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is it's not taking up any space. We can upload as many photos, 1 million photos if we wanted to, and it's not counting against your space because you're never uploading your photos. You're uploading smart previews, which doesn't tell you that. That's the blessing. You're never going to hit your quota or your limit or need to buy more. You can upload as many photos as you want because you're only uploading smart previews. The downside is if you actually wanted to share this. Now, for most people, this is fine. 2,560 pixels, 2,500 pixels, 240 resolution, between 240 and 300. You can print an 8 by 10. You can post this on the web, post on social media. For all intents and purposes, most people, that's fine. That's all anyone that you share that with would probably want to do, other than print or client delivery. Right? For client delivery, you can use a third-party plugin. I use SmugMug. There's others as well, Pixie Set, some others. But just know that you can enable, if people ask, you can enable that just right from here. Just go to settings, click on the little icon here, go to settings, and turn on allow downloads. You just have to know how to get into that. That's the tricky part, right? You can also just type in lightroom.adobe.com in your URL, sign in if you haven't signed in before, and that will show you all of your collections. Click on the collection that you want, and you'll have access to it. So lightroom.adobe.com or just that view on the web. Either one's gonna do it for you. All right, let's put this back in presentation mode. All right, rebuild sync data. Let's see where we are. Okay. Fred, what do you think? Like another 15 minutes? Is that okay? Something like that? I'm happy to go longer. I just want to be respectful of everyone's time here too.
Yeah, 50. Yeah,
Okay.
I was sorry. I was entranced as well. So yes, 15 minutes
Yeah, you
works
could just
works
tell me
for all
because
of us too.
there's so many more. I should tell you guys. We're at what 50? I have 80 or 90, right? So there's gonna be more than I have time for. I kind of expected that. That's why we kept this a two-part series. But I'll go as much as I can, and then Fred, you can throw your hand up, interrupt, and we'll leave some time for Q&A. Or if you guys
I'll,
have specific questions, you can.
I'll throw the I'll interrupt at 15 minutes and we'll
Cool.
see where you're at with whatever point you're on at that point.
Cool. And guys, remember, right? Anything you're looking for, there's going to be over 100 tips in here. I'm going to keep on adding them as tech, and technology previews and all this beta stuff comes out. You're going to find it all here, right? So it's always going to be updated. All right, rebuild sync data. If you see this dreaded sync error, right, how do we fix that? A lot of people are asking me these questions. A lot of my students have these problems as well. What you're going to do is click on this cloud icon. If you don't see that, drop this little triangle down. So you see the library developer and everything else. You're going to click on this cloud icon, and then you're going to say syncing, right? If it's stuck, this happens to me all the time, right? What you're going to do is first pause and then resume. Sometimes that will fix it. By the way, this is a separate thing. It's actually important. There's a little bug in Lightroom too that if you're finding you can't sync your collections, just come up here, pause the syncing, restart it, and you'll probably see that these little squiggly lines that show you that you're syncing your collections. That's how you'd sync them. You just click this little checkbox. Like if I want to sync golden hour, there we go. Now I'm syncing that. If it's not doing that, click on the cloud icon and you can pause the syncing and restart it. If that doesn't work, you're going to click on this gear icon and you're going to see this. You're going to go to Lightroom Sync up here. You're going to hold the Option key down. It's like a little hidden handshake you have to know about, and then you can rebuild the sync data. So that's what that is. It'll restart Lightroom, flush everything out, and hopefully that should fix it for you, right? Just try pausing and syncing again. That doesn't work, rebuild the sync data. So those are the slides I'm going to help you there. All right, change sync location. We can go to preferences and we can sync settings. And the reason why this is important, back to that whole one thing before, simplicity, right? So if we go to Lightroom Classic and preferences, we'll have a tab for Lightroom Sync. That's where we just were. And over here where it says location, by default, you're going to notice it puts it like its own directory inside of Lightroom, completely isolated and in a silo from everything else. Why, right? If I'm taking pictures, half the time I'm taking pictures on my phone, most of the time, then my drone, then my Sony, and then some others. I need them all in one place because the organizing principles are on the time, right? Not the camera. I can break that down by metadata in a heartbeat. That's not a big deal. I want everything to fall into one place, in one folder, in one drive, in one computer, one back, everything else. This is how you do it. You go to Lightroom Sync, and you can change or choose your location. So I choose new photographs. I have new photographs and I have old photographs. The new is everything I carry with me. The old ones are everything I keep aside and have smart previews with, right? So that's how you do it. And you could change one location and choose that same location that when you go to import, and I'll be walking through this next week, we're going to import to that one parent folder every time. So in one button, you're going to be able to import, organize, edit, backup, and even auto keyword, all of it in a single click. And it starts with having a parent folder, single parent folder right there. So you want to change your sync location. So like that person mentioned before about what about my phone? How does that integrate? This is how it integrates. Everything from your phone is going to go up to the cloud and down to this folder that you choose, which is why it's so important to have one parent folder. And inside of that, you get to choose how it's going to break down. And this is a very specific way to do it. Year, month, and day. Same exact way we do our import when I set this up for you. And now we have a system in place. All right, batch auto level. This is pretty cool. So you'll notice that if you want to level, fix a horizon on some of your photos, let's say if they were messed up, these are all pretty much pretty good already. But let's say we wanted to fix them. There's no way that even if I try and like sync these settings, there's no like auto level here. There's no way it's kind of strange, right? So what you do instead is you go to 1 and you go down to transform, and here's your auto level inside of transform as well, right? Fixed it, tweaked it a little bit. All right, that's all we need to do. I usually use this auto. It fixes the perspective distortion as well. You're not going to notice it in nature as much. You're going to notice that more in like New York City and man-made architecture with intentional lines and all that. But this is how you do it. You have your transform. Then you can go back to those other photos and you can sync Shift Command S, right? And you can sync these other things too. You don't have to. I can just say check none and I can sync the transform. All right, and that's going to auto level your images. So just something to know about. There's a little sneaky way to get around how you can auto level your pictures. I always get a kick out of people like trying to perfectly level their photos. Like, why? This is so easy to do in post. There's more things to worry about. Worry about the timing. Worry about the light. Worry about the composition. Worry about the exposure. All of that stuff. Okay, sync smart collections. I'm going to skip this one. Just know that there's a plugin out here. It's called AnySource. It's more important that you know about it. I'll put a video for this as well. I'll be posting it. And I get into this a lot more when we do the boot camps, so I do the Lightroom University and all that. But what we could do is sync smart collections. So think about this. I went to Italy twice last year, and I want to share my favorite images. And I want to pool together my favorite images. And I go there 2 or 3 times a year. Right? We do multiple workshops there, all over. In Venice and Dolomites, Prosecco Hills, and the Alto DJ. I just want an easy way to pull it all together. I can set a smart collection and say, pull in everything that has a folder named Italy. This is really important. If you just name a folder, every image inside that folder is going to be labeled with that folder name. And you can keyword it as well. Right? Just know if you label the folder, nothing else, that's going to work. I'm going to get into a lot more detail next week. All right, if we do that, I can say, show me every picture that has a name, whether it's a keyword or folder name, Italy, and then 5 stars, my favorites of Italy, right? The problem with smart collections is, one, I can't move them around. I can't sort them. I can't reorder them. Same with keywords. I can't sort or reorder them. They're there to find your pictures, not to do anything with them. Smart collections are there to find or auto-aggregate your pictures, not to do anything with them. I need a collection that I can do something with. I can reorganize, I can resort, but also I can share. I can't share a smart collection. This software allows me to basically correlate a smart collection with a dumb collection or a normal collection, or regular collection, whatever you want to call it, so that I can sync. So it's going to automatically aggregate in the smart collection and then mirror that with a collection that I actually can resort, reorganize, and share. That's pretty cool. Just something to think about. All right, so that's the plugin for that. Okay, reference image. This is another cool one. Let me show you if I can show you an example of this. Okay, here we go. Let's say I like the way I edited this image. I love the colors and everything else. I'm going to right click. I'm going to set this as a reference photo. Now, when I'm working on this image, you'll see the shortcut, Shift R. If I press Shift R, it's going to put that reference photo, the one I like, next to the other one else. It's similar to the compare tool, right? If I hit C to compare. The difference being I can now edit the image on the right to match the colors. I go to color mixer and maybe hue. This is a quick way to create a fall color, to go into HSL and just bring the oranges down and the yellows down. And now I'm starting to get this similar vibe, right, to this. And so now that they're starting to match a little bit, that's my before, that's my after, right? So that's pretty cool, this reference photo. And I never see people utilize this, but when we're going to post our images, we're going to share images, man, it's really helpful to have that consistency in the color and the look. And you'll notice, this is something I'm working on, you can auto match exposures, but you can't auto match tones inside of Lightroom, not natively. So having this reference photo allows you to approximate, so it gets a little bit closer, right? If I just hit C to compare, that's not going to help because I can't actually adjust the photos when I do that. Why it wants to bring that one up, but you get the idea. There we go, right? There's no way for me to adjust them. So the reference photo allows me to adjust it in comparison mode, essentially. All right, auto adjust per slider. Now, this is something cool too, right? Let's go into this photo here. And if I want to start working on these sliders, if you're starting out, right, I'm going to reset this. how do I know like how much exposure, how much blacks, how much whites, right? I can shift and double click on the slider, and it's going to choose what settings it thinks are the right settings for me. It's pretty cool, right? So just something to keep in mind, you can auto adjust just by shift and double clicking on the slider, and it's going to choose the settings that you like. I still like mine better. And I'll show you guys how to edit these two. We have 2 sessions on editing coming up soon. Okay. Auto adjust, auto reset per slider. I can double click and then click again and go back. What the heck does that mean? Let's say, oh, this is one of our workshops. Okay, let's do this. I want to bring I want to make it like a more blue hour. Like I like this. Let's say I go too far though. It's like tuning a guitar. I want to go a little sharp, a little flat, a little sharp, a little flat. Right? If I go down, what I can do is I hover my cursor over where I just chose, and I double click. I don't move the cursor. I can click to bring it back, double click to zero it out, click to bring it back, double click to zero it out, on and on and on. What this does is give me a way to turn on and off the impact of that single slider. It's like a reverse auto adjust. I'm adjusting and I'm automatically bringing it back. So if I go to the exposure, double click, and I can see, do I like it this way? Do I like it that way? And I can just bring it back. Right. So that's the double click. I use this all the time, and I never really see people know about that. It's really, really helpful. Toggle panels, that's another cool one. So if I wanted to, let's say, adjust the tone, but then I realized, hey, I don't know, do I really want to, I can turn this on and off. So there's my on and off toggle, but it's temporary. I have to hold and let go, right? But the shortcut, the secret, hold option when I click the eyeball. And if I do that, I can just turn the tone curve off and leave it off. So it doesn't turn back on again until I do something to it. And then it turns back on. So option, and it gives you that little light switch that we used to have to turn something on and off. Okay, let's do a couple others. Person conversion. All I mean by that is you'll see this little asterisk next to the who. I'm gonna get into this next week a little bit more. Every photo we can find is basically who we're with, what we're doing, where were we. Trust me, every single time. There's never not a scenario where that will work. But the who, Lightroom handles a little bit differently. We have face detection, right? So if you right click on the who specifically, something I have to set up with you, we can choose to convert keywords to person keywords. This is already done, but then also put new person keywords inside this keyword. What that means is Lightroom has a very specific way of handling keywords when it comes to people, when it comes to face detection. If you label something inside of that face detection view, it's going to consider it a person keyword. It's got a little square and it understands the face and all that, right? It's pretty cool. So I want all those person keywords to be inside of the who. That's one way that I can correlate my system with the design of Lightroom. So every time I tag a face, it automatically gets put in here. And then you can go in here. I've done this already. You can right click and say, convert all the other keywords that are in here that are just pictures of people's faces. That's the who. Or if it's Johnny's birthday party, it's not every picture taken at that birthday party. That's the event. It's every picture of Johnny at the birthday party. That is in the who. Every picture of this, every picture of this person. That's the who. So I can convert all those keywords, if it's done correctly, as person keywords. So it shows up inside of the face detection. It all comes together. I can explain that better. I can show you that rather than just gloss over it. All right, you want to don't find similar. Maybe this is the last one, or the last or second last one. Don't find faces. You want to be smart about this because we're talking about using the people detection now, right? So let's go to, let's see, we have 9, 10, 11. Let's do 2024. We've got Acadia there. Let's show all of this. Let's go to 11 here, right? We're looking at some images here. If I click on the face detection, it's going to find all these faces, right? And this is how I see people work. They just go image by image. That's insane, right? We have hundreds of thousands of photos. I have over 1 million photos. That would take forever. You want to be smart about this. Don't find faces, find similar. So if I find one face and I type in, this is Roger, right? it's gonna show me I have these named people now. If I go up to the top, I just need one face and only people you care about. Don't tell anybody else. Only people care about. Then I look for that face. And instantly I can shift click and I can approve 20, 30, 50, 100 at a time. And as I do, I'm just going to hit this little checkbox. As I do, it's going to get smarter. Now it has different angles, different lighting conditions. I go to similar, right? Find similar. Don't find faces, find similar. And I can keep on doing that until I find all the faces of this person. Keep on doing it. All the pictures of Roger. And that's Roger. And that's Roger. And I keep on adding it until it starts to get smarter and smarter until I have all the pictures of him. So you're not ever going to use this people view. That's crazy. You're going to find just one face of someone you're looking for. Go up to name people and have Lightroom find the rest of those faces inside the sea of faces. Let Lightroom do the work. That's what I mean by find similar faces. All right, delete multiple keywords. I did this right before this presentation, right? Because people send me photos and I'm importing all this stuff. This keyword list can get a little unruly. Believe me, I've seen this happen before. So many of my students, this is the first thing I set up for them. Who, what, and where. Every photo you've ever taken everywhere will fit inside one of these three categories, or all three of these categories, right? We have another one because Xire, because now I'm using a third-party plugin that's automating all of my keywords, right? Most of them, not all, most of them. All right, so I have little assistants there now. We have AI assistants. Lightroom doesn't have this built in natively in Classic, but we do have that inside of the web. We do that inside of Lightroom Mobile. I can show you ways to get around that as well. But for now, we're going to delete multiple keywords. So if this gets a little unruly, usually you can only delete one at a time, but now you can select a whole bunch of keywords, right? The ones that just don't make sense, or someone else sent you these photos or whatever, you don't need them anymore. Select all of them. And instead of right clicking and choose delete, you're going to hit this little minus key here instead. Right? I definitely don't want to delete these. But that's how you get rid of multiple keywords. I remember I did a presentation years ago at B&H. And I brought up the catalog and I was like, oh my God, I have like 100 keywords. It looks like I'm totally disorganized because I'd imported a lot of the photos. I work on other people's images. And I was trying to delete them one by one. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. It's a little hidden trick. Select all of them, that little minus key. That little minus key there. And along those lines, we're good? All right, let's do this last one.
Okay, one more.
Yeah. Purge unused keywords. It's just because it correlates well. If you have a lot of keywords, this is getting a little unruly. You can use a shortcut, metadata purge unused keywords. And also you could just go to help, right? You could just say purge. You'll find everything you're looking for if you just go to this help menu, or you can go to my document, which literally breaks down everything as well, in a little more detail. This will tell you what to do. And if you purge unused keywords, all those keywords that are empty will just disappear, right? So there's something to know. Now, there's tons more. These are all different slides. It's fine. I don't want to talk so fast that, we can't get into all this. Just know that there's a lot more information out here. We'll be spending next week going through more of a workflow, more comprehensive. And I have a course I'll be launching in the beginning of the year as well. That's going to be walking you together. We're going to be working on your catalog as the new year launches. So if you guys want these slides, again, you can go to my website, you can go to lightroomtipsandtricks.com. That will take you to a place where you'll get access to this. You'll get access to also all the slides, right? Every slide that I use in this presentation, you'll have access to. It's already posted there, right? So just something to keep in mind. And if you guys have questions, just reach out. All right, speaking of questions, how are we doing?
Good. I mean, you're chock full of information. And luckily, gratefully, we have the 5-session Lightroom week coming up, starting on Thursday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. We're all set on that. So as far as questions, the only other one that came from the chat, Sandy asked about the QR code to the Cliffs Notes. So we grabbed the target URL and shared it in the chat for you. So if you're not looking, if you're looking for that QR code, just head to the chat and the link is right there for you.
Yeah, or lightroomtipsandtricks.com, or shoot me an email, any which way. If you guys have any problems, just reach out.
Yeah. I had one curiosity about everything that you were talking about, like learning by doing, or what some might call fake it till you make it, right? Versus sitting down to practice these shortcuts and tips. Is
Yeah,
learning by doing enough, or do you recommend setting aside time for the sole purpose of learning?
it's both, right?
Mhm.
So practice makes perfect isn't enough. Perfect practice makes perfect, right? And so you can have a rough idea of how to do something. But if like these little tips, like I said, like you have all these, a lot of you probably watching have a long list of keywords. And now you're like, okay, I have to organize this. And next week I'll show you how we can do it. Now I got to put this inside of there. I got to put Empire State Building inside of New York City, inside of New York. And also, you don't know yet because I didn't get into this, but I will. I could do that in one click, right? And we can literally create a whole thread in one click. We can remove all of your unused keywords, like that last one I showed you, in one click. There's all these things that if you knew the right way to do it, will save you so much time. The practice comes in through the implementation. You need to know how to do it first. Like this is something that's sorely missing right now. And this is why I spoke to you guys about creating this week. We did this years ago, and now a whole lot has changed. And this is why I do my boot camp. This is why I do the Lightroom University. I work with people for years, actually. And if they're doing it wrong, what I mean wrong is just like not an efficient way, or they're doing something it's gonna be a waste of time, then what's the point of putting all this work in
Sure.
when it's just gonna be like not helpful in the future, right? And so I'm understanding. I work, with Adobe. I work with these software companies, and I do this all the time with so many people. I see what's coming out, and so the plan, the roadmap, the framework that I'm going to give you is such that you're never going to need to redo it. And I can't stress how important that is, right? You're never going to need to redo this. We're talking about keywords. That's going to be automated. It's already starting to. We already see some of the software coming out. So doing the least amount of work possible to get the most amount of results, right? And we talked about editing, which we didn't get into because I knew that's I have 2 days just on that. So don't worry about that. I'm going to show you the best way to do things and find ways that we can scale it. So when you know on a foundational level, and this is what's missing, is we get these little like this, like tips and tricks, right? This is just there to open up your eyes a little bit. But what a lot of people are missing, and I know this because I work with them, and they come to me stressed out, is an actual solution, right? Not just here's a little tip, here's how to do this little thing, here's what you should know about this. Here's like a framework and an actual solution that you can start and finish, and on an ongoing basis, know that you're not wasting your time and it's going to grow with you as you grow, as the technology grows. That's, I think, the most critical thing. And that's what we're going to start working on. So, yeah, you can learn by doing up to a point. I want you to take, and this is why I do these cohort based training, I do these boot camps, I do these other things, because I want to challenge people to put into practice what I'm showing them. And it's only when you learn by doing that you realize what's not working and what is. But if you don't even know where to start, you might be doing something you don't need to, or doing something the wrong way that is wasting your time. And that's like the biggest thing I can offer you is your time back.
Awesome. Well, you got your 2,000 yards for the season. I'm gonna let you break the record come next week for Lightroom Week. Remember, everybody, enjoy your New Year's celebration safely and soundly, and come back to us for a 5-session Lightroom Week with our resident Lightroom Master, Cliff. Sir, thank you very much.
My pleasure, Fred. I will
Um,
see you soon.
yeah, if you guys like this and want to see more from 2024 or even before, you could go to the store, or you could check out the BH Event Space YouTube page. With that, Cliff, thank you again. This has been another edition of the BH Virtual Event Space. Everyone have a great day. Happy New Year.
See you in the new year.